Yesterday was not the time, today is simply time, and tomorrow, it will be too late, and so on all the time. We're always waiting for the best, it's too early, or there's no time knowledge of the resources of opportunity, and then it's too late. Similar problems is found in almost every second person, and even the most famous people have had some difficulties, and each of them has dealt with it differently. For example, the French writer Victor Hugo once trimmed his heads and beards to eliminate any desire to go out in order to write a novel within the stipulated time frame, and the German composer Ludwig van Beethoven used to dip his head in cold water, but nowadays, thanks to recent advances in neuropsychology, don't have to resort to such radical methods. You just need to know a few simple things that will get you off to an easy start to do any task. The brain is responsible for instincts and other mental. In our body is the responsibility of the brain. And it can be divided into two components, the limbic system, or the ancient brain, and the neocortex, or young brain. Instincts, the ancient brain is responsible for, the young brain is responsible for all conscious activity. So when you want to eat, for example, a cookie to meet a partner or hang out on social networking sites for a couple of hours, it's the ancient brain that's in charge. But when you have an important project to do, it's the young brain that gets activated. But the young brain, unlike the old brain, consumes a lot of energy, up to 15% of the energy of the whole body, and it doesn't care much about things like survival and reproduction, which in turn are the most important functions for the preservation of the species. So it's in our body's interest that we think as little as possible, and that we don't waste a lot of energy. But very few people are able to have full control over those two components, and, if necessary, to push the old brain to the back burner in order to fully activate the part of the brain that's responsible of creating a separate activity, most of us, that requires a number of ways, and we're going to look at the most effective ones. The first way is to exploit your brain's weakness for not completed actions, which means that if you start doing something, if you get in the process, it's going to be difficult to stop because your brain is pulling in work, and the unfinished business will be very irritating. And that's something that I've been able to confirm in his research. A psychologist, he was doing a study where all the subjects were given a puzzle and asked them to put it together when the work was almost complete. The test subjects were asked to finish it. There was no point in continuing because the puzzle was almost complete. But here only 90% of the participants refused to finish the work until the puzzle was fully assembled. A similar effect can be noticed, for example, when reading a book that is not interesting book or watching movie. Even if there is not much point finish a film or a book unconsciously, we still wanted to see it through to the end. So in order to use this method, you need only to move from the dead point and start the process, and then the effect of not getting it done will constantly pushing you back to work. The second method is to keep the first step as simple as possible. Simplify the first step as much as possible. To get to work, just because we get obsessive thoughts about how difficult the job might be, and how much effort and time, and we haven't even started the job, and our brain is already starting to draw the most dire consequences because of that. And we're trying to push as far away as possible that scary moment, and in order to avoid that, you just have to break up a lot of work into smaller tasks. For example, if you have to write a huge thesis, you don't have to do it all at once. To begin with, plan to make a cover page, then do the table of contents. After that, write the visions. Thanks to these little step-by-step steps, you can without any problems to perform even the most complicated work. The third way is to make new neural connections. Our brain doesn't like to do something new because, in its mind, it can be quite dangerous to do a new activity that you want to start to do is different from your usual activities with fewer neural connections in the brain, and in order to acquire these new neural connections, you have to keep practicing. And that's where visualization can come in. Visualization, because in your brain, whether you're doing it in reality or if you're just imagining the process of doing it in your head, and in the first or in the second new neural, and the psychologist Alan Richardson was able to prove that. Richardson, who did an experiment with basketball players, he was able to prove that just by visualizing their training with basket shots, the players were able to improve their performance, which was only slightly worse compared to the results of those players who had been the time they were in the gym. So if you want to use this method, just start to mentally imagining that you're doing something you're doing, and most importantly, the pleasure you get from it, and more importantly, how much pleasure you're getting out of it. You'll make new neural connections, and it will be much easier for you to start to do a new job for you.